Well, it ended on a hopeful note, which This Is Us was good at balancing hopefulness, hopelessness, despair, all in just a show where every episode, I think, with the exception of one, I was just a tearing, blubber, I can't even say the word blubbering mess. But it was good cries. Good cries for every episode was something that I needed for every episode. So, this last one, I guess, tied up everything nicely. Really over the lives of Rebecca and Jack. But it was like, Miguel was just always a side character. And it's like, Miguel was married to Rebecca probably longer or as long as Jack. But, understandably, I guess, Jack was the first love and the one, I guess, if you really had to grow Rebecca and if she really had to tell the truth that he was the one as wonderful as Miguel was, and at least Miguel got a whole episode devoted to him, which was great, and it really just showed the man Miguel was and how much he cared about her and how much he loved Rebecca, and at the same time just what the Pearson family was, their whole dynamic, their relationships, and I guess I can go main character by main character. It's going to be like a 97-hour podcast. And I'm walking home right now and trying to dodge traffic at the same time. So if I get hit, you'll know, because I'll probably release it provided I survive. But so I guess let's start with Jack. Jack was as if he's a real person who died. I guess the arc with Jack, growing up in a household where his father wasn't the nicest man, abused his mom. Jack was a fixer, so he always he saw a problem and he just tried to fix it. I mean, so much so that he basically followed his brother to Vietnam to try to save him, but which turned out that didn't work. So at least with the Jack character, it just showed that not everything worked out, especially since because he died, but just he never got to repair his relationship with Nicky. And it just kind of left it to where they never did. They never did get back together, and that happens sometimes. Maybe they would have provided Jack had lived, but it just didn't turn out that way. And just how Jack died was just so tragic and so unexpected, due to the fire and then the guilt that it left with Kate. Just carried over into Kate's life, and so I'm glad it didn't. It was interesting how the kids idealized Jack, but then it showed how imperfect, for lack of a better term, that Jack was. Just the pain that he carried and how he tried to numb that pain through drinking. And, also just trying to fix things and not being able to sometimes, and how that affected him. But it just showed how, at least we got to see through the flashbacks how much he was missed and the memories that he sparked in his family. And then there was Rebecca, who seemed like maybe she wanted, I don't want to say more, but something different, at least at first, striving for a singing career, ironically played by Mandy Moore, who had and has a singing career. Started out as a singer, a pop singer, and has gone on to do some great acting work, obviously, in This Is Us. And then it just turned out as she meets Jack, and she settles down, and then just foisted upon her with the birth of her children, how she was the anchor of the family when Jack was alive, and especially after Jack died, how she was able to fix things herself and to hold things together, whether it's trying to deal with young adults grieving herself, and trying to deal with all those dynamics. And then, as she got older and through all of her problems, really, I think the cast revolved around Rebecca and the how she just, she was the sun. She was the sun, and everyone else was the planets who I think revolved around her, and truly the anchor of the show. And then I guess while we're sticking with the main adults, we can go to Miguel, who I mentioned earlier. Miguel was just a loyal friend, extremely loyal friend to Jack, and so loyal, in fact, that I think he had feelings for Rebecca, maybe soon after Jack died, but out of respect for Jack, didn't even want to go there. And then, he moved away, and then and as they were apart, the absence, it made the heart grow fonder, and how their relationship developed to where, it was just a different relationship compared to the relationship with Jack. I think they both filled a need and a void for each other, but within that void, they truly, truly loved each other. When Miguel, on the penultimate episode, the ghost of Miguel, if you will, you said that she was his favorite person. Again, how he was one planet revolving around the Rebecca character, and I truly believe she was, just the anchor of that show, and how his loyalty to the very end, literally to the very end, and keeping up with the routine, and another fixer, really, like Jack, in taking care of Rebecca up until the end. And it just showed a long life filled with purpose. He was able to reconcile with his son, unlike Nicky and Jack. He was able to have some closure before he died. And so we'll go to the kids. I guess we'll go. Randall was probably my favorite. Not only just the acting of Sterling K. Brown, who was just stellar, absolutely stellar. Just how, just even like a facial tic could just like devastate me with his performances. And then when he was just able to emote on a whole range of emotions. And Randall was probably my favorite character because of his arc, and it's the arc that dealt with identity, not only as a black person growing up with a white family and in a white area, but also a black person who was adopted. So you have the two forces of not only race, but family. So it's trying to figure out who he is as a black person that the show, I think, explored very well, and also just who he is as far as where he comes from, and all the issues that come with being adopted. And being adopted is a form, it can manifest itself as a form of grieving. Grieving the person they could have been had they not been adopted, grieving their biological family members, what they could have been, whether the biological family members died or the biological family members for any reason had to give the kids up, even if it was a benevolent reason. And William, it was a benevolent reason that he had to give up Randall. But even with that, just that void that Randall tried to fill, and with Randall, and I'll talk about William next, but with Randall, it was just, it was Beth, who was, great, really summed it up, where it's like, okay, worst case scenario, you're just going to go keep on searching. You're going to keep on searching until you reconnect with everybody long after they're gone. And I think Randall's story was one of a person who was searching, and it seemed at the end he truly found who he was and where he was. And how he was and why he was. So just a beautiful, beautiful arc for Randall. And I can't believe I forgot William. His arc was one of guilt, dealing with substance abuse, which, later went on to Kevin, and then with Nicky as well, and then Kevin's friend, the actress from House, I forgot her name, how they all dealt with that. But with William, so it was dealing with the substance abuse issue, and then dealing with the guilt that just followed him until Randall found him, and then he was able to have some kind of redemption. And Randall in how he can fix things, and sometimes successfully. Fixing doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing if you overdo it and if the people don't want to help, yes. But Randall was able to take care of William up until the end. So, you have Miguel taking care of Rebecca, Randall taking care of William, and how just how William was kind of like Miguel, also able to get closure up until the end. Very hard life, very tough life, with not the worst ending. He was able to come out at least peacefully instead of tragically. So let's go to Kate. So Kate's arc was, again, one of guilt, because she thinks she was responsible for the father's death because the father had to get the dog, and then also just dealing with, especially after Jack died. Jack was her world. I'm talking about planets and the sun. Jack was her son, son S-U-N, because that would be weird, S-O-N. And then when he died, she was having problems already. But when he died, it just, the shaky foundation that she had fell apart, because there was just a dependency. And possibly with Jack being the fixer, he was unable to kind of let go of that. So when Jack was gone, the house of cards started to fall, and Kate with her issues, especially with her body and body image, followed her for a lot of her life, until she found, acceptance with that, and how she was able to gain confidence by finding purpose, which took a while for her, but she found purpose through a career, which became a successful career, and it seemed like she would start to open schools. So she again, another character through thick and thin, through very tough times. She had some help with Kevin, but she really had to find her own way through it all, through her marriage with Toby, to raising the kids, through all her trials and tribulations, to the issues with money, to the issues with living separately, to then swing back around to where her life, at least by the last episode, seemed to turn out all right. But it was quite the struggle in how she would deal with her own issues. So, when Jack had issues with substance abuse, Kate had issues with again with body issues and eating and using eating as a coping mechanism, which on the flip side with her friend's name who had Kevin's, oh God, I'm forgetting her name, but where like they kind of made a joke out of it where they met at like an Overeaters Anonymous type group, and the friend that she made was thin while everyone else was overweight. But I'm glad they had that episode where it explored the eating disorders and how she would restrict and use behaviors to deal with her issues and her pain. And then it turned out that Kevin had the similar issues as well with body image. So it kind of went through the spectrum of, between Katie and Kevin and, oh God, I'm going to have to put her name in later, but Allison? Oh God, I'm making that up. But how it explored their similarities, and even though they had different issues, their pain and their how they dealt with pain was similar. So let's go to Kevin. Kevin was probably my least favorite character because even though obviously he went through some hard times with substance abuse and obviously losing his father, it just always seemed, and they would touch on this as well on the show, he always seemed to just get what he wanted. Things always seemed to work out for Kevin no matter what. No matter what, he would always come through and be successful and be a millionaire and be a movie star and get all these roles and I'm not bitter, but and always get what and up until the end, really got what he wanted, just found true love. And I think it would have been better, and maybe I'm just sadistic, but I think it would have been better if they had an arc where, maybe for Kevin at the end, it didn't work out. Maybe he was alone at Rebecca's funeral. He still had his kids, but maybe he never found, maybe what would have made it, kind of melancholy, but, still subtle anyway, that he was never able to get back. I'm forgetting her name too. His first wife, and then they got divorced, and then they got back together again at the end. Maybe I think it would have been better if there was something missing instead of everybody being so complete at the end. One of the best scenes was the group therapy scene where they really hashed it out. And if you can find it on YouTube or if you can get back to the show, that was just really well done, how it just explored their dynamic. And his tension with Randall was palpable, especially when it dealt with race issues and how they had it out. And even though they all fought and they all went through these things, they did, and there were some big, just knockout, drag out, like emotional fights. There was always the love there for each other because they were family and they all grew up together and they all went through so much, the big three. So I got all the kids. So let's go to the spouses, the main spouses. Again, I kind of touched on Kevin's wife. She was in and out of the picture. They grew up together and they got back together, but she wasn't on the show that much. But so let's go with Toby. Toby certainly was. And the actor who played him was also in The Nick, which was a great show. So it was so funny. He had this Irish accent on in The Nick, and then he had believe it was his real voice on This Is Us. But, a likable, nerdy guy where it's kind of like shows how, and I'm around their age. I'm 45, and I think the Pearsons were through most of the show in early 40s. So it's like, it's growing up with all the geeky, nerdy stuff, and then instead of abandoning that in adulthood, you kind of take that with you. Even though you're still kind of adult, you kind of hang on to the things that you enjoy. And, my apartment is not unlike Toby's place with the movie posters hanging around and all the sci-fi stuff. And I don't have any kids, but I do have a nephew. And my nephew's, he's a young man now, but growing up, with just getting him all into, hoping that he was into Star Wars and sci-fi and geeky stuff. And now that geek is a compliment instead of a pejorative. It's nice to have that. But so I share similarities with Toby that way, and again, just how Toby was able to cope with his pain, just going through depression, and how he wasn't able to deal with stuff sometimes, just the pressure of life and trying to, again, fix things and trying to keep things together, and his tension, especially with Kevin and Randall too, was just palpable. And when it was such a great scene when he and Kate had it out, where it's like, I cannot be Jack, or at least the idealized version of who they really thought Jack was. Because, sometimes when somebody dies, you only remember the greatest parts of them, and tend to the parts that weren't so memorable tend to fall by the wayside. So that scene was so powerful when Toby had it out with her, and then that last episode where he just admitted he just still loved her. Like, I think he met someone at the coffee shop, but I don't know if they were together. At least not at Rebecca's funeral, they weren't. So, but still, similar to, so if they were together, it's just like similar to Miguel and Rebecca and Jack and Rebecca, where Rebecca still loved Jack, and that's okay, and that's okay. You can have these two conflicting feelings at once, and it sounded like Toby did, and his arc was interesting, just again trying to find purpose at work and at life, and balancing things, and it just didn't work out for a bunch of reasons. And I like how they had the tension with the family, and so I can move on to Beth, and it was so funny, R&B. I think that was the first time they did that, and just her relationship with Randall is just, they really support each other, and just how they were able to just kind of, even in the most serious moments, kind of joke around with each other, using humor as a defense mechanism, but how she was the anchor of her family, how she, especially when Randall would just fall apart, would absolutely fall apart, she was there to help and support him. And then going through the arc of her own with her mother, just being controlling, and how she was able to deal with that, and then through the death of her father, and then dealing with the ups and downs of the dance studio, where eventually she was able to. You see, that was one thing I would have liked at least one character to work a job that they fucking hated, because it just seemed like every character kind of loved their job at the end, and but then again, Randall and Beth, I think, at least at the beginning, didn't like their job, so they ended up at a job they liked. And I don't know, I'm a similar way. I had jobs that I absolutely hated, and then I'm fortunately to be in a job that I like right now. So, okay, I take that back. But, such a strong character. It was a supporting role, but supporting roles are important too, and how they interact with the main characters. And she was just someone who, again, I think used a lot of humor as a defense mechanism, and at the same time just had her, as we all do, just anxiety and just pressures, and how she dealt with that was very well done. And let's go with Nicky, because there were some episodes with Nicky as well. It was, how he and Jack kind of diverged to where obviously they were brought up in the same household, but same household and family dynamics. People are at different ages, so the age in which they brought up counts. How they were treated by each parent based on their age counts. And Nicky was, while Jack, I guess, was more of the bruiser and more the tougher guy, the older brother, wanting to take care of things, wanting to fix things. Nicky seemed the more quiet and sensitive type. So when he did get drafted to Vietnam, you would wonder, like, would he survive this? And he did survive this, but part of him was left there, and it took an incredibly long time for him to for him to help himself, for him to, with the help of Kevin, with the support of Kevin, but it was a lot of resistance for him to finally dig himself out of what he was going through, because he was suicidal. And, you know, maybe if Kevin didn't show up, he would have eventually died by suicide. Thankfully he didn't. Griffin Dunn's just a great actor. He was in one of my favorite movies called Johnny Dangerously, and he's just been in a lot of things since then. But I was so glad to see him in this, and how he was a recurring character. And just, you know, I always think of, and they touched on it, what he was like in that trailer, but just what he went through since coming back from Vietnam and losing. I mean, he lost his brother, I think, even before he knew his brother was dead. And just that abandonment or that void of not having that support and not having that family, mixed in with substance abuse and mixed in with PTSD, it's a very, very lethal combination. And, you know, and Kevin did have the means to help his uncle out. And Kevin himself was a fixer. He had a lot of resources. So it made it easier writing-wise, because, Kevin's a millionaire. He was just able to just throw a bunch of money at something because he's this famous actor. So he was able to do it, not have to worry about the pressures of a job that Toby did. So they had that juxtaposition between Kevin and Toby, where Toby was falling apart and feeling all this pressure. And Kevin's like, well, I can help you. And Toby's like, I don't want your help. I just, you know, for whatever reason, pride or just not wanting to become dependent on Kevin. His personal feelings towards Kevin could have been a factor as well. His ego could have been a factor as well. And Nicky was kind of the same way with that resistance. But through Kevin's help and support, you know, and Nicky said that at the last episode, you know, again, using humor as a way to, as you know, a coping mechanism, or just a way to really shine light on such a serious subject and such a grim event, for lack of a better term, as a funeral. So a great performance by Griffin Dunn, and a really good character arc for Kevin. Just the writing on this show, I don't know how they did it, but just how the writers and just the whole putting together of the show, how they were able to push every emotional button that I have to where I was really, really just a good mess at the end of the show. So kudos for helping me feel, because I think that's why I turn to music and movies so much, because it's just easier. They help me feel, you know, because we go through life because it may not. We have a social contract with each other where it may not be appropriate to just start screaming and crying in the middle of a supermarket somewhere. But in the safety of and comfort of your own home, hopefully, the safety and comfort of your own home, you're able to show those emotions. And music and movies and TV, especially a show like This Is Us, they're able to help get it out of us. And once we get those feelings out, we feel better, or at the very least, less worse about the things. And, you know, and growing up, especially me growing up as a boy I was born in '76, so growing up as a child in the '80s, as an adolescent in the '90s, it really, at least where I was from, looked down upon if it was acceptable if a boy and a young man was angry. It wasn't acceptable if we cried, because then it'd be like, what do you know, insert derogatory word, insert homophobic and misogynistic word in there, and then you'll know what it was like growing up like that. And, you know, and as men, we could hold that all in, and when we hold that all in, it sometimes finds just a terrible way to come out, whether it's anxiety, depression, turning to substance abuse, because that's, you know, having a drink is an acceptable way to deal with the quote-unquote acceptable way to deal with the pain. At least back then it was shown as, have a drink, you'll be all right, or hey, chin up, or through violence and fighting, like all these destructive mechanisms, instead of like, I don't know, getting together with a friend and saying, hey man, can we talk, and maybe crying with your friend or giving your friend a hug or screaming or shouting and having a space to do that. And thankfully now it's more acceptable to go see a therapist as a man and hopefully really break down those walls, at least in that room with a professional, where they can hear you and give you space to emote those feelings, regardless of what they are, whether they're socially acceptable or not, to give you that space where society and maybe members of your family or friends, maybe they wouldn't. So that's my tangent about music, movies, therapy, TV, and all that. Some of my favorite things. But back to This Is Us, just a well-crafted show, masterfully acted, thoughtfully written, just a great job overall. And it's interesting. It's one of those shows that I know I'll miss, but I'm not devastated that it ended. I thought it ran its course, and it's good. It's good, and I usually with shows I really liked, and I really liked This Is Us, I was like, no, you can't end, please don't let it end. And with This Is Us, it's like, I don't know, it's just coming to terms with, when a show dies, it's accepting that it ends and being okay with that. Just like Rebecca lived a full life, did a good thing, and was able to go out peacefully and not really on her own terms. That was hard. Just how her mind started wasting away, and that's just that's a really tough thing for me to watch, and how the show did it, how it just showed her slowly starting to slide down. That was incredibly painful, at least for me, to see that, because I've had family members with something similar, and it's just like, with a like debilitating thing like Alzheimer's or dementia, it's the person experiencing it experiences pain up to a certain point, but then they don't realize that it's even them anymore experiencing it. It's the family members who have to watch this happen, and the best you can do when it comes to something like that is they may not remember that maybe you did something great for them, a day ago. They may not even remember who you are, but they do know in those moments that you treated them lovingly, kindly, and with respect. They will, for those moments, realize that in those tiny moments, and Jack spoke about those, remember, just grasping to those moments, and so that was a good scene where he was. Now that I'm that age, it's true. It's just when you're young, at least for me, I can't wait to grow up. I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to do that. And now that I'm 45, how old am I? Yeah, 45. It's some part of me wants to go back and right the wrongs, but there's another part of me that appreciates the moment I'm in, appreciates through all the hardships, especially this day and age with COVID and with all the just garbage that's going on, appreciating that I'm here right now and pretty comfortable actually. Mentally I'm all right, physically I'm really good, and just trying to appreciate those moments, while having a healthy fondness of the past without getting too nostalgic, and having plans for the future that hopefully will come to fruition. But we'll see. And if they don't, at least I could try and hopefully accept things that maybe didn't turn out. We all can't be Kevin Pearson, So, anyway, once again, I'm not bitter. So, if you're not bitter after listening to this podcast and you want to listen to more of it, feel free to, listen to other ones and rate and share and review. And you can also find me on Twitter at MMAM Podcast. You can email me at MMAMpodcast@gmail.com. And you can find me on Facebook at MMAM Podcast. And since COVID started, or at the very beginning of it, it's still going on, folks, so the numbers are pretty high. Please be careful out there, and please get information, not only of COVID, just for every topic. Really empower yourself with knowledge from credible sources. That's how you know, and that's how you can, speaking of coping, that's how at least I cope with things. So get your information from credible sources. Try not to listen to somebody who makes you mad. If you know that you're really mad and they start to rile you up, you know it may not be the best source. Punditry has its place, but you really want to have a knowledge base of news. So you can get that from New York Times, USA Today, NPR, BBC, Washington Post, just to name a few. It's excellent work there, and journalists are my heroes because they know how to disseminate information in a truly fair and balanced way, not like other places who say they're fair and balanced. So, all right, I think you've heard enough from me, so I'm going to go now, and until next time, folks, talk to y'all later. Bye.